Coming to you from the Armed American Radio Studios on Peachtree Street in downtown Atlanta. This is Armed American Radio. Here is Mark Walters.
Welcome to Armed American Radio, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Mark Walters, and we are discussing your right to carry a firearm. And let's go to Dr. Rob Steele, who is running against John Dingell, and let's get his opinion on this, if that's okay.
Yes, take care.
You bet. Ken, thank you very much for that. Great question. Dr. Steele, welcome to Armed American Radio. How are you today?
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's what a great segue there with your previous caller, Ken.
You know, and that was by design. I have to say, Sean, I have to tip my hat to Sean there. We were able to keep Ken on, and he happens to be from Michigan, and he asks a very legitimate question. And, of course, I wish that Rachel was on to take that question. She was on as a member, a spokesman of the NRA, spokesperson of the NRA in the first segment. But a great question, and one that pops up all the time when you talk about those endorsements, and he makes a great point. So let's talk about it with you, because you're actually running against John Dingell right now. How do you answer, Ken?
Well, obviously I know what their policy is, and I know they're going to endorse him, but I must say I was fairly surprised when the postcard came to my home, of course, being a lifetime NRA member with the A rating, but not a previous legislator, how vehemently stated and worded this postcard is about helping him in every way possible and standing up for rights based on helping him only, with phone numbers, where to go to work, and these sorts of things, where I can understand the notion of supporting the incumbent. Believe me, I understand that whole game, having been involved here firsthand. But to not even let the members know that, with just a one-liner, that the opponent is also A-rated, it seems a little bit strange. Now, luckily in my district, in some ways, the coordinator for my district happens to be a big supporter of mine, and we've had lots of NRA outreach, and we've done lots of events at the various shooting clubs around and that sort of thing. So we've tried to reach the NRA members the best we can to know that they have an alternative and they don't need to just go blindly by what the NRA says, because there's no question in this district that while Dingell gets the NRA nod, there's no question that I line up much more with most of these NRA members on all the other issues than does John Dingell. And
Dr. Steele, when we come back from the break, I want to continue that, because that's a very, very important answer to a very, very important question. You're on the Armed American Radio Network, folks. We'll be right back. Dr. Steele, welcome back to Armed American Radio, sir.
Thank you. You know, we were talking about that NRA thing, and here's the twist that's key that the NRA needs to wake up to. You know, John Dingell and I are in a close race. There's no question about it, and what we do know is even if he managed to squeak past and prevail, it's not likely he's going to be there again.
Yeah, right.
And the reality is you know, it comes time when you want to start to build a new relationship. And should he win, and then that's an empty seat next year in a new election cycle, it could be entirely different. And then what will happen is then there's going to be a free-for-all there. And who knows? You know, maybe there's not going to be a strong gun candidate in that race, as opposed to the fact that, you know, if they at least mention the fact that I'm, you know, a qualified candidate in their eyes, and that, you know, is what makes the difference to get me over the top, then the NRA has a solid relationship already built and one that can carry on for a few years, rather than who knows what happens, because my district includes Ann Arbor.
Right.
And Ann Arbor is certainly not, generally speaking, looked at as, you know, one that's a strong Second Amendment place. And it is the largest population center in the district. So,
Dr. Steele, it begs this question, because your situation with John Dingell, here you are, a life member of the NRA. Here you are running against John Dingell. Here he is getting the NRA endorsement. And I am also a member of the NRA and will always be a member of the NRA. But these are legitimate questions, and it's not just Ken in Michigan asking these questions. We see this a lot. And I think part of the reason that the NRA is taking a little bit of heat in this election cycle is because so much more is at stake this go-around. Now, I have to ask this question. Do you feel, as a life member of the NRA, that you're actually fighting against the organization that you've supported for so many years as a candidate now?
Well, in a way, certainly. I mean, they're sending me, the mailer saying, hey, send us money for our legislative action. What? So they can use it against me?
Right.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't make any sense. And, especially when you have, Dingell, who's not been the staunch NRA supporter he has been in the past when he's been dinged and been taken off the board for some recent votes. And then also he's got a very poor rating with Gun Owners of America. So, every election is different, and every race is different. And my race is a classic example where, if I was running the NRA, I would be sitting there thinking, you know what, we're going to endorse Dingell like we always do, but we're going to throw 2 lines on that postcard to say, by the way, his opponent is also a lifetime A-rated member, because the NRA, could end up on the wrong side of this thing should he squeak past and win, and then we get an open seat next year and get an anti-gun candidate in there.
Well, Ken, the caller in Michigan, made a great point that if all of the NRA-supported candidates win, we have the exact same, well, not the exact same, but we have a Democrat-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled House. And, of course, that's not good for anybody right now. We need split government more than ever now, to stop this agenda. And, yeah, it's a very tough call. And I don't envy their position by any stretch. George, do you want to comment on it?
There's so much at stake here, and we've got the NRA, and they've kind of been playing against a lot of best interests with a couple other issues, especially down in Georgia. So it's kind of a two-edged sword with the NRA, but they do remain the biggest dog in the fight. And even though they do things that I don't particularly care for, they still get my support for their overall efforts. And, I just feel sorry that, we got a candidate here with an A rating that probably shouldn't really deserve it. Then we got another candidate rating that, lifetime member, and he's not getting the credit he's due.
Well, wait a minute now. Here, okay, let's defend the NRA here. Dr. Steele, please jump in here. But when we had Rachel on, she'll flat out tell you that the NRA policy, as Chris Cox told Tom Gresham, and would tell us if he were here, that their policy is to support the incumbent if the incumbent carries their grade. Which, okay, now we go back to Harry Reid again, okay? And John Dingell, of course, has supported the NRA's positions, the ones that they believe have been important. But I think what's going to happen, Dr. Steele, is that the NRA, because of the importance of this election cycle, and I understand their position, I really do, where do you draw the line? They're looking at this as single issue, as you said at the onset of the first segment with you. But because of the importance of this particular cycle, there's more at stake now. So jump in and tell me what you think needs to be done.
Well, I think clearly the population in general, and I think the NRA voters in general would say that for the NRA candidates to win and have the Democrats maintain control would be a disaster. I mean, I wasn't running on gun issues. I voted for Dingell in the past in a couple of different elections because of the NRA endorsement. But what we have now is we have an entirely different thing. It's like Joe Miller was saying. I mean, I got involved in this race because I didn't want to get to be 80, look back and say I didn't stand up when it came time to protect my grandkids, when their future opportunity was being stolen by this out-of-control spending, which will put them to work for the government the rest of their life instead of for their community and their career and family. And it would be, I think, a black eye for the NRA should all the NRA candidates win and the Democrats maintain control. I think that would put extreme pressure on the NRA from the membership to say maybe we need to rethink what we're doing here, and maybe we need to put our resources elsewhere when it comes to these things. Because my race is classic. I understand that the endorsement process and that they would give the endorsement to the incumbent, but to have the postcard mail out be so emphatic in not even acknowledging that the opposition in the race has an A rating as well. Just put one line on there so that people know, and so that those voters know that they're going to end up with their NRA-type candidate regardless of which way it goes. Because a lot of voters, they don't get informed on the rest of the stuff. That's clear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're right. I think the NRA will relook at this because they are feeling some pressure from membership, no question about it. But as George mentioned, they are the biggest dog in the hunt, and they absolutely need our support. My every time I'm asked that question, and I have been asked that question on the air before, where are we without the NRA? Think about that, folks, okay? Politics is a rough and tumble business, Dr. Steele, as you well know. Nobody can tell us that more than you. Okay, where can we send listeners to support you right now in crunch time?
Absolutely, it is crunch time. They had Bill Clinton in today for John Dingell. And
no
so
way.
People need to, yep, that's correct. John Dingell, they're 55 years, and they're still calling in Bill Clinton to help them out because it's a close race. Rob Steele for Congress.com. And that's forcongress.com. Rob Steele for Congress.com. People need to go ahead and send $78. $1 for every year that John Dingell and his dad have held that seat. $78 donation for a 78-year father-son combination in the 15th District, state of Michigan.
You heard it right here on Armed American Radio. Rob Steele for Congress, folks. Go there. This is the Armed American Radio Network.